Tulsi Gabbard, a former Democratic vice chair and military veteran, has been a vocal advocate for peace and diplomacy in the face of war and conflict. Through her experiences serving in the U.S. military and witnessing the human cost of war firsthand, she has developed a deep understanding of the complexities and challenges of international relations. During her deployments in Iraq and Kuwait, Gabbard was confronted with the harsh realities of war. As a member of a medical unit, she was responsible for tracking and caring for injured soldiers, experiencing the emotional toll of casualties and the impact on their families. She witnessed the physical and psychological challenges that injured soldiers faced, as well as the emotional burden of leaving comrades behind. This experience deepened her commitment to advocating for peaceful resolutions to conflicts and avoiding unnecessary military interventions. Gabbard also became aware of the war profiteering that occurs in conflict zones, with companies like KBR and Halliburton making exorbitant profits at the expense of taxpayers and exploited foreign workers. The relationship between defense contractors, politicians, and the military-industrial complex perpetuates a cycle of endless war and financial gain for a select few. Gabbard's exposure to this corruption fueled her determination to challenge the status quo and push for accountability in government spending and decision-making. The influence of the military-industrial complex in government and the revolving door between the Pentagon, defense contractors, and Congress poses a significant challenge to reforming the system. Gabbard recognizes the entrenched nature of this complex and the need for bold leadership to challenge its grip on policy and decision-making. She has been a vocal critic of the revolving door and the undue influence of defense contractors on national security priorities. Gabbard believes that war should only be justified when it is in the best interest of national security and as a last resort after all diplomatic efforts have been exhausted. She emphasizes the importance of understanding the enemy and their motivations in order to build effective strategies for combating terrorism. Gabbard acknowledges the complexity of defeating terrorism and the need for a multifaceted approach that combines military action with ideological countermeasures. She highlights the importance of building relationships with local leaders and communities to counter extremist ideologies and prevent the spread of terrorism. In the context of the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, Gabbard emphasizes the need for a nuanced and compassionate approach that recognizes the shared humanity of both Israelis and Palestinians. She acknowledges the complexities of the situation and the deep-seated resentments that fuel the cycle of violence. She calls for strong leadership and a commitment to peace and understanding as the only path to lasting resolution in the region. Gabbard stresses that the only way to end the war in Ukraine is through open and honest dialogue between the conflicting parties. She highlights the importance of setting aside past grievances and focusing on building a peaceful future. When discussing the role of the U.S. president in resolving the conflict, Gabbard suggests that the president should encourage Ukrainian President Zelensky and Russian President Putin to come to the table for negotiations. She acknowledges that in an ideal world, the U.S. president would sit down with both leaders to facilitate peace talks. However, Gabbard expresses concerns about the current administration's stance on the conflict and its lack of willingness to engage in meaningful dialogue. Gabbard acknowledges the complexity of the conflict in Ukraine and criticizes the oversimplification of the narrative into a battle of good versus evil. She warns against falling into the trap of divisive rhetoric and emphasizes the need for nuanced discussions on how to achieve peace in the region. She urges for a deeper understanding of the conflict and a commitment to finding peaceful solutions. Gabbard reflects on her own experiences meeting with controversial leaders, such as Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, and the backlash she faced for engaging in such dialogues. She emphasizes the importance of meeting with adversaries to seek understanding and prevent needless wars. She believes that demonizing leaders without engaging in meaningful conversations only hinders the path to peace. Throughout her political career, Gabbard has faced criticism and smear campaigns, particularly regarding her alleged ties to Russian President Putin. She attributes these attacks to powerful interests within the military-industrial complex, who seek to discredit anyone who challenges their agenda. She highlights the importance of standing up to these forces and advocating for peace and diplomacy. In discussing the threat of nuclear war, Gabbard reflects on the catastrophic consequences of such a conflict. She highlights the dangers of normalizing discussions around nuclear weapons and emphasizes the need to educate the public on the true risks involved. She stresses the importance of preventing nuclear escalation and advocating for disarmament to avoid a global catastrophe. Gabbard highlights the alarming implications of the TikTok ban bill, which is being expedited through Congress with bipartisan support. The bill gives the executive branch the power to designate foreign adversaries and ban social media platforms associated with them. This includes individuals with financial interests in these platforms, potentially leading to censorship and restrictions on free speech. Gabbard emphasizes the need to protect freedom of speech and expression, arguing that censorship is not the solution to combating hate speech or misinformation. She warns against government overreach and the erosion of civil liberties, urging the public to voice their concerns and oppose the bill. Gabbard expresses skepticism towards government regulation of technology companies, citing concerns about power dynamics and lack of technological expertise within the government. She advocates for transparency, accountability, and public engagement in addressing issues related to data security, privacy, and content moderation on social media platforms. Gabbard acknowledges the need for checks and balances to prevent tech companies from abusing their power, but cautions against granting the government unchecked authority over communication platforms. She emphasizes the importance of a robust public debate and journalistic investigation to hold tech companies accountable and protect user rights. Reflecting on her experience as a DNC vice chair during the 2016 primary election, Gabbard recalls witnessing bias and favoritism towards Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders. She notes the lack of neutrality within the party leadership and mainstream media, which influenced the outcome of the primary and undermined the democratic process. Her decision to resign as vice chair was motivated by a desire to uphold fairness and transparency in the primary election. She chose to endorse Bernie Sanders, citing his non-interventionist stance and commitment to addressing critical issues such as foreign policy and military intervention. Gabbard also criticizes the party for being controlled by elitist warmongers pushing a divisive, woke agenda that erodes civil liberties and promotes open borders and identity politics. She emphasizes the party's hunger for power, which she believes has led to a disregard for the Constitution and the interests of the American people. While acknowledging that both political parties have power-hungry individuals, Gabbard points out the unique challenges within the Democratic Party. She notes that the party enforces strict conformity to leadership and is willing to destroy democracy to maintain power. However, she also acknowledges that the Republican Party has its own issues with corruption and establishment politics. Gabbard reflects on her friendship with Joe Biden and his initial promise to unite a divided nation. She criticizes Biden for failing to deliver on his inauguration speech pledges and instead deepening divisions within the country. She highlights his shift towards the national security state and his reluctance to challenge the status quo, despite his earlier anti-war stance. On the other hand, Gabbard praises Donald Trump for his willingness to challenge political norms and his resistance to attacks from opponents. She acknowledges his success in disrupting the establishment, but urges him to surround himself with courageous individuals who prioritize the interests of the American people over personal gain. She emphasizes the importance of learning from past mistakes and cleaning up corruption within the government. Gabbard shares the central role of her Hindu faith in her life, describing God as her best friend and source of strength. She explains that Hinduism is a monotheistic religion that embraces all paths to God and emphasizes love and service to others. She draws on teachings from the Bhagavad Gita, such as Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga, to guide her actions and deepen her relationship with God.